Hello everyone, welcome to Wennatenio Channel. We do talk about crazy faith things here. So yes, I'm wearing my crazy workout clothes today. And if you're new, welcome to our channel. And if you are a return visitor, welcome back. Our topic today is about Jesus's Talitha Coum timeline shifting street cred technology. So, some of the words that Jesus spoke were kept exactly as they sounded. The Talitha Coum was kept exactly as he said it. So Jesus taught in common street Aramaic, so everyday language. But the legal language of the day was strictly, widely Greek, which is what the Gospels were written in. Some of the words Jesus spoke were too precious, too Aramaic street to translate to Greek. So the ones who heard them never forgot their sound. And when a synagogue leader's daughter died and was being mourned, Jesus took her hand and his words were, Talitha Coum, little girl, get up. Now, Apostle Mark kept these words exactly as that room heard them in Mark 5:41. So why were these words preserved exactly as he said them? It was because the people who heard them in the room never forgot their sound. The sound of Jesus' voice saying them survived. So why would Jesus go so far as to speak common street Aramaic? It's because when our brains are learning a new behavior, there is a shortage of glucose fuel, which creates stress signals and mental discomforts. So low sugar levels force the brain to stop new actions and go back to easier old habits. And old habits take less fuel, so the brain likes them better. The girl died, and she was also what you might call a religious politician's daughter. And her brain waves that were still alive for up to 14 hours after death would naturally have still responded to anything street Aramaic or base or anything other than the heady synagogue political rhetoric and legalese that she was surrounded by constantly her whole life. And she was 12 years old at the time that this had happened to her. So there's two things here. Jesus is speaking the synagogue lingo. If Jesus were speaking the synagogue lingo, he would have provoked scorn, as he'd be ridiculed for not being a politician. It would have forced hypocrites' brains to overfunction, and the girl's brain hadn't enough glucose left to process any of that type of speaking. Her clinically dead situation wouldn't afford that. But the hidden natural pathways that every brain seeks out to escape reality or self-destruct, these still have had a huge reservoir of glucose left available, even at her low death level brainwave frequency. So he said, Talitha Coum, little girl, get up. Jesus bypassed all the headiness, and he gave the room of mourners a neural mental pathway escapism for a moment. And where two or more are gathered, which they were at the funeral, their humbled poverty state, due to the ultimate humble powerness of death, their brains instantaneously synced and believed with such faith, crazy faith, in something other than their synagogue law truth of their legal reality. This is a synagogue leader's surrounding, I don't know, they were co-workers and family members. They would have this type of lifestyle about them, this sort of legalistic, affluent way of thinking. Their legal, scientific, egoic brains concluded death is death. So these people were concluding that this girl was dead. But their insane, crazy faith brains were quick to laugh with Jesus and follow a new belief quickly. So we're going to get into why. They had been literally in a death room, a funeral parlor of sorts room. And had Jesus used legal words, which he did at first to provoke the unbelievers there, they laughed, even though they subconsciously converted. Now, what mourners have you ever seen? Even the whole room will just laugh. It shows their suffocating arrogance of python-like unbelief. Because even Jairus, the girl's father, had faith enough to push through the Aramaic thoroughfare streets and ask Jesus for help before going back to his house. And then what happened? Not far behind him were the unbelieving python snakes, laying wait to see if Jairus would try to evade the synagogue belief system of hard, fast, cold scientific reality that he taught he was the leader. So as soon as he found Jesus and was talking faith with Jesus about his daughter dying, here come the political zealots. Why bother this leader? Your daughter's dead. So Jesus went to shut down these pythons in the death room because he already spoke the miracle to Jairus in the crowd for having faith, and now was being undone. So he went to give the Lord's justice onto these snakes, which is Jesus's true way, what he taught us. He even put them out of the death room. So he pushed these people out. He got rid of them. Get out. So what happens next is this amazing reality of the very words he spoke. So he touches the girl's hand like Jairus had asked. And then Jesus says, Talitha Coum. Just go there for a second in your minds. Not your logical mind, but to the sound of a neural pathway of least resistance. Talitha Coum. When Jesus asks, is it easier to say, be healed, or is it easier to say, pick up thy mat and walk? Think for a moment. Is it easier for him or any one of us to say, be alive again? Or simply, get up, little girl? To say, be healed to an invalid of 38 years, to say, be healed to someone paralyzed that long would invoke anyone present's logical minds who'd say, wait a minute, he needs a month, maybe years of physiotherapy. To say a street our words are here. To say a street deal like, just get up with your mat, we are going to walk around and heal all the sick people today. Which one cuts straight through with crazy faith to the OG of Bethesda? Right? Who laid on the street for 38 years trying to get help? He's a street OG. If he laid there 38 years and no one helped him, he still likely got passerby comments of, why don't you get up and help yourself or go see the priest? More often than not. But he's street hardened with poverty now. Street life is hard. If you've ever been there, you know that. He's an OG. He knows the ways of the streets. So what he's used to is being kicked around, pushed around, yelled at to move along. Jesus says something that both dignifies this man as well as reaches his neural pathways of least glucose resistance. Pick up thy mat and walk with me. I'll add with me. Because he was there. No one ever helped that man like that before. If it were easier to say be healed, all the naysayers over the 38 years would have said it easily as, they can do, and it would have worked. Was it easier to say she's not dead, she's only sleeping, or to say little girl, get up here by me? Because he was there. Talitha Coum. It was easier to say, but it gave the death room a new sound. Talitha Coum. The sound of those street language Aramaic words. That's what they were. When Jesus said, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. John 14:3, NIV. John 14:2, my Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? It's in verse 3 here. That where I am, you may be also. Now he's in these rooms. He's at the pool. He's there with you, with them, with us. These rooms he talks about here in John 14, he changes the death room for Jairus' daughter into Talitha Coum room. A room even the streets where wisdom cries out would understand. Common people, street OGs, they understand this type of speaking. The Bethesda street OG understood the new room and that he'd be right there as good as Jesus was healthy. The synagogue leader Jairus' dead daughter's low brainwaves understood it immediately and rose to the new room where she was with Jesus in this new place. Immediately. Talitha Coum. The disciples never changed the power of the street words. Now, Jesus only took Peter, James, and John with him to Jairus' house to see the girl. And how do we know that? Mark 5:37 tells us that. We know Peter had issues with appeasing the Roman Jewish crowd and wrote in Hebrew, Galilean, Aramaic. So that was something above street cred language. It was a higher way of speaking, the way that Peter wrote. And we know James and John wrote their books in Greek, an even higher legal standard of writing of that day, sort of a university language compared to street alley language. So then we come back to Mark. Why did he preserve the Aramaic street cred Jesus spoke in, and what does it do to the rooms of the old nature's brain hemispheres within us, our old nature's brain hemispheres? So, Mark wrote for Gentile Romans and Galilean believers. He did overtime in his calling niche of really honing mindfully in on the street cred they'd understand, while Peter, James, and John overlooked that part. So they explained the rooms Jesus spoke of to Mark. Recall, he was strategically not there at the resurrecting of the girl. And when he heard the street cred words from the other apostles, Talitha Coum, he got it immediately. Mark got it immediately. Because he's a man that understands street cred, street speak. Jesus meets people not in a king's palace or a high synagogue or a royal governor's setting. not even in a school classroom or a lecture hall. He held open air on the field training. The Son of God, the Prince of Peace, taught in everyday street slang cred to real OGs, to clinically dead, nonetheless living dead, using crazy faith, common everyday street language. This is the real Jesus. When we hear Talitha Coum and sync our meditation minds, not our logical, heady scientific minds, we enter a living room. And maybe that's where we get the idea of living room. I don't know. But hearing those words, Talitha Coum, letting them reverberate, meditate into our vibration, we feel, we know that room, that he's there, that it's living, that it's lit up with actual light. Spectral light absorption tells us thermodynamically that it's true. Because we feel it, we experience those words. That's where we can see, feel, and know how to shift timelines and frequencies. Talitha Coum. You can feel the new room when you hear those words. You can hear the exact words that Jesus used to bring that room to life once again. And the girl. Jesus gives us this manner, the Jesus technology of doing so, of shifting timelines. We use street cred to heal and to lift the dead. That's his method. Because the yeast or the high learning of the Pharisees, synagogue or religious leaders, and even political and scientific leaders won't do these things. They won't shift timelines, frequencies, nor will they venture to employ such speaking. Yesterday, back then, or even today. But the masses, the Gentiles, the common folk, the believers, those with great faith, us, we do understand that type of everyday speaking. We're sinners. They understand street cred, real everyday crazy faith language. We all do. Unless we speak scientific, heady things. John 14:2-3 tells us Jesus' technology for shifting these timelines or actual rooms and life situations, creating these new rooms. So street issues, common folk issues, the public's hardships affecting the world in every way today, health, financially, resources, equalities, everything you can think of. Jesus says in his Father's house. So this mental kingdom inside us has many rooms. Many street cred common sayings, commands, words, etc. that have egoic left and right hemispheres don't have, or that they don't operate on. So these rooms, there are many that both hemispheres, there aren't many understandings. There's usually black and white, yes, no, very dichotomous thinking with the left and right hemispheres. So to tell a grieving person or an invalid a logical or emotional command, they will champion us like a Sons of Siva spirit scenario and talk us over or laugh us to scorn if we try to heal them. What street cred their brains respond to, and so do the sick and the clinically dead's brains respond to crazy faith street cred Jesus technology. He shows us. Because once we say the obvious thing that needs to happen, will happen, or should happen next, the person obeys with the neural glucose path of least resistance. And they are now in a new room, and one that their brains can understand. But also, Jesus is there. And he says, for where I am, you will also be. And because he's in us, when we heal the sick and raise up the dead and preach the gospel like we're uncovering here, he is with us creating new rooms for us to level up to, new rooms to enter into, where He is with us. So is it easier for me to say to you, viewers, to take notes and learn the street cred method of Jesus for creating rooms to shift timelines, to quantum time travel essentially? Or is it easier for me to say, just get up from the old place of not knowing this before you watch the video and now walk and be able to do it? Either way, I think you are now a Jesus Technology expert on the Talitha Coum and Bethesda Pool methods of timeline shifting. And I would love to see you again in the next video. So, love you guys and keep watching.